Welcome to Bibliophiles Anonymous, episode 22. I'm Denise.
And I'm Jess.
And we're happy to have Holly back with us.
Yes, yay! We browbeat her into playing with us again.
Well, we had so much fun with her last time, so
yes.
Yay! So we have...
I got threatened.
Huh?
I got threatened. Jess told me I had to do it. So I'm here.
Well...
Hey, whatever works.
Excellent work. Okay. Today's show is going to be a lot of fun. We're going really simple this week, and we just want to talk about our favorite books of all time and see if anybody else out there has read them, or, you know, when we start more discussion about it, if you want to say some of the books that you've read that you really enjoyed, and, you know, just get a whole big book list of all the books that we love. So
basically, we're going to completely have a total fangirl moment episode.
Yes, that's what this is. So first, we will, as usual, talk about what we are reading this week.
I'm still reading Beautiful Creatures. I actually read some more. I've been so distracted by Lord of the Rings because after their downtime, they decided that until the 26th, experience is going to be doubled. And, you know, I managed to come by 1,600 turban points. So, yeah, I've been kind of distracted by Lord of the Rings online.
It happens.
Yeah, but I went to bed last night, you know, before daylight, and I laid there, and I laid there, and I laid there, and I couldn't sleep, so I started reading Beautiful Creatures again. So I've actually made a little progress on that, even though I haven't updated it on Goodreads. But I'm still stuck there, so I haven't read anything.
All right, Holly, how about you?
I haven't read anything different since the last time I talked to you guys because I've been working.
Oh.
And it's been, like, crazy busy at work. I haven't had time to read any while I've been at work.
Lots of people are having babies right now, apparently.
Yeah.
Apparently it's the thing to do now.
It happens. Well, let's see. I am almost done with Lyriel by Garth Nix. That's the second book in the abortion series. And I gotta tell you, I'm actually enjoying this one even better than Sabriel.
Wow.
Yeah, Sabriel
was really good.
Sabriel was really good. This one just kind of answers... You remember we had all those questions about kind of the world and the different kind of groups of people? This goes into a bit more detail, especially about the Clare.
Ah.
So because Lyriel is one of the Clare, so you kind of see a bit more about some of the questions that we had are answered, and, you know, there's more detail. It's really long, too. It's about twice the size of Sabriel. So it's huge. But the funny thing is that I got it from the library, and I also went ahead and got the third book, which I'll start when I finish Lyriel. And the third one's called Abortion. And it's about the same size as Sabriel. So it's like we have these two little books and then one huge one in the middle. I don't know why. But it's really good. So, you know, when you get around to it, when you don't have anything else to read.
Well, I have the ebooks of all of them, so...
Yeah, it's definitely worth it. Like I said, I'm enjoying it even more than Sabriel, so...
It's going to be a while before I get around to not having anything to read. I have a massive read list. And Jessica keeps adding to it every time she reads something. Hey, add this to your list. You need to read this next. Hey, read this.
Look,
okay.
You have to help me browbeat her into finally reading City of Bones before August.
Okay, yeah, you have to read.
On the list.
Well, we need to look.
To it eventually.
You have an iPhone, an iPad, and a Kindle. You have no excuse.
It's with you all the time. But yeah, you have to read it before August because that's when the movie comes out. And we're going to have a big, huge Cassandra Clare party when the movie comes out. So yeah.
And if you're not there, then you're a loser. So you have to read it. Look, this is one of those that when you start, you're not going to want to put it down. You're going to want to read every single one of them.
Well, I have the first 3 books sitting right in there.
And I have a lot of the ones you don't. So
really have no excuse.
Read.
You just have to tell me which one to read after I read the third one, because I can't remember. I think I have to do
Clockwork
the other
Prince.
one. Yeah,
or
and
Prince.
then
Clockwork Angel, that one. Clockwork Angel.
And then go back to the City of Falling. And then.
Well, you don't have to, but it's more fun that way because there are characters in Clockwork Angel that show up in City of Lost Souls. Or City of Fallen Angels.
Fallen Angels, in it.
Whichever one.
Because I almost bought City of Fallen Angels too, and I was like, well, I think I have to read the Clockwork something or other first, so I didn't get it.
Well, you don't have to. You can read them however you want to. She just said because there's characters that crop up that it's more fun to do it that way.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But yes, we are going to do a big thing when the movie comes out. So, yeah, you definitely have to read it before then. So you have plenty of time. You have, what, 6 months? That should be plenty.
Yeah.
You have plenty of time to read it, so that's good.
If she'll actually start.
Okay, see, here's the thing. If you're going to pick on her when we do the podcast, she's really not going to come back.
Right? See? That's not the way to keep me coming back.
But I pick on her all the time. Not
True.
just now.
I'm used to it.
Oh, okay.
If that were going to run me off, I wouldn't speak to her anymore.
Yeah, see, I mean, I've been doing this for, 11, 12 years now? She's still around.
Why? I don't know. Something wrong with me. I just can't. I don't know.
She's a glutton for punishment.
That's it.
But then I do really nice things for her, like highlight her hair and blow dry it and straighten it for her.
True. She did do my hair.
Aw.
So that's around. She's good for something every once in a while.
Oh, well, good.
See?
All right, well, let's go ahead and start talking about our favorite books. Now, these are ones that we read and just got stuck in our heads, and we read them over and over again on those rare occasions when we have nothing else to read, or even when we have things that we have to read, but we just don't care. We want to keep reading these books over and over again because it's like they're in our blood, you know? So who wants to go first?
Well, I will, and I know this one is going to be a very big one for me and you.
Okay.
And that's The Belgariad and the Malorian by David Eddings.
Oh.
Which, it's one of those that I have read over and over and over, and I know these books like I know the back of my hand, and I still want to read them quite frequently.
Yeah, it's I think it was either last year or the year before I finally went back and reread all of those. Now, there's 5 books in the series we should mention, just in case anybody hasn't read them, and that's just the first series.
Yeah, that's the Belgariad, and then there's the Malorian, which goes along with, and then there's Belgariad the Sorcerer and Pulgara the Sorceress.
Yeah, which are kind of companions.
So
yeah, so there's a lot of books in this particular series, but yeah, I have to say, the Belgariad was the very first fantasy series that I ever read. And like you, I just fell in love with it. I loved the characters. I loved the whole world that they lived in. I just got completely caught up in it, and I've never been able to get out.
Yeah, that's me. I mean, I read them. The first fantasy I ever read was Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. And then I had a cousin. She was like, "Oh, you like that? You need to read these. I really, really like them." So I borrowed them from her, and I can remember finishing a book and being like, "Mama, you have to take me to Heather's now. I have to have the next book." Because it was before I was old enough to drive. Like, you have to take me over there now. I have to get this book. I have to know what's going to happen. And I've loved them ever since. Garion was probably the first fictional character I ever actually fell in love with.
Yeah, he's such a cutie.
And, Belgarath ain't bad. I can't help it.
If you like older men.
He's snarky and...
Really older men.
Well, yeah, he's 7,000 and something.
Oh, he doesn't look a day over 6,000, though.
No. And it's so funny because, I've got some really, really old electronic digital copies of the books that I got years ago, back before ebooks were really, big. And I've been going through them lately, correcting and putting the italics all where they go and everything. And it's so funny because I'll be reading and I'll get to a certain point and I'll be like, "Oh, I'm coming up on this conversation. I need to make a picture out of that and put it on my Tumblr."
Yeah,
I know them so well that I know where these conversations are going to come.
Yeah, you've been putting a lot of them up on your Tumblr.
I really have.
Yeah.
Well, it was Supernatural. Now it's the Belgariad.
It works. Well,
Whatever.
There's plenty to choose from. That's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, in 12 books, there's a lot of stuff, a lot of material there you can use. And I find it amusing. I put a few of them on my Facebook, and a friend of mine whom I've been trying to get to read these books, she saw them and she's like, "Okay, this is kind of making me want to read the books." And I'm like, maybe I should upload more of these things.
Yes, bring everybody into the craziness that is Eddings.
And then I dragged them over to the tavern, which I already dragged Holly over there. She just doesn't play much.
Forget about it.
Well, see, that's the thing, too, is that gosh, and this is going to make me just sound like kind of a very non-internet person, which is not the case anymore, but it used to be way back when. And the very first, I guess, fandom that I ever got into was David Eddings when I first got on the Malarian Tavern. And so the very first, like, friends that I had on the internet was on the tavern. And, well, I mean, that's where I met you, Jess. And then, so you're probably one of my oldest internet friends.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, I was 16 when I originally found the tavern and joined. And I will be 30 in September, so, that's 14 years that I have been stalking this fandom. I mean, at least 14 years, because like I said, I wasn't 16 yet when I first read them, so.
Right.
It's.
Well, that was just it, was because after I finished them, I wanted. Nobody else around me had finished them, and I desperately wanted somebody to talk to about them. That's how much of an impact they made. So I didn't know where else to go, so I was like, well, I'll just go online, because and back then it wasn't there weren't as many websites,
Right. There wasn't a forum website for every topic known to man back then.
So it was really something, different to me at least. And like I said, that makes me sound kind of, silly, but it was just so exciting to find like a group of people who were as excited about it as I was. So yeah, that's part of why the Belgariad and the Malorian too, kind of hold a special place.
It started, I was poking at my Malorian ebooks, and then I was like, well, you know what, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to start posting quotes, I need to just start from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And that's when I put the one on Facebook and tagged, all of my tavern friends that I could think of. And I'm like, it's the first paragraph from Pawn of Prophecy. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, there are those of us who have been reading our way around this circle for so long. Because it really is a circle.
Yeah.
You read the Belgariad, and then you read the Malorian, and then you read Belgarath and Polgara, which actually tell the story of what happened, before the Belgariad. But then at the end, in the epilogue, it picks up at the end of the Malorian.
Right.
So you have to start over.
Of course. It's a never-ending cycle.
Yes. And then, aside from the Belgariad, there's also, and this is one Holly will actually be able to get in on, the Harry Potter books.
That would be the second fandom that I got involved in on the internet.
Probably the first one I got stuck into.
And Holly actually read the Harry Potter books before. She started reading them before I did.
I was the one that started that one.
You read the first one when we were in high school, didn't you?
Yeah. I was working as the library aide. I did, check out the books to kids and stuff. And the school got it in, and she wasn't sure if she wanted the kids to read it or not because of the whole controversy of it teaching witchcraft and all this. And so she's like, I want you to read this and tell me if it's okay before I put it on the shelf or not. And I'm like, okay. I'm looking at it. I'm like, well, this is going to suck. This is, I'm reading it. I'm sitting and reading. I'm like, Jess was like, what the heck are you reading? What is this? I'm like, oh my God, it is so awesome. You have to read this. Oh my God. And then the next one came out. I was like, oh my God, I have to have it. And I was hooked. I was sucked in.
Yeah, they're good at doing that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's one of those where, it's Harry is a really good role model for kids because, he teaches to stand up for what you believe in and do what's right even when it's not easy and, stuff that kids actually need to look up to.
Right. Right.
But there's such a wonderful story there, and it sucks you in, and the characters are all so well written.
And, you get such a story on them, and you relate to them, and you, get attached to these people, and you have to know what's happening to them.
Yes.
Yeah, I came to the Harry Potter party just a little bit later, because I didn't read the books until after I'd seen the first movie, and it's actually funny because I didn't intend to go see the first movie at all, because I was one of those people who was under the false impression that, well, they're just kids' books, so, they're just for little kids. No.
That was when she told me to read it, and I was like, do I have to? Because
it's a kid's book, yeah. And so, I remember I was we were going to the movies, and I think the movie that we were gonna go see was sold out or something. And so we're standing there, well, let's see what else is playing or starting about this time. And well, there's this Harry Potter thing. There's so much, hype about it. People are talking about it a lot. We can kill a couple hours. That's fine. And immediately left the movie theater after the movie was over and went to the Barnes and Noble and bought the first book, and then read it so fast that I had to go immediately start it over again, because even though I had just seen the movie and knew the main crux of the story, I mean, the movies do pretty good, but they have to leave out a bunch of stuff. There's no way around it. Otherwise, the movies would be like 7 hours long, which I'd be okay with, but most people wouldn't be.
Right.
But I had to go back immediately and read the books again, because I couldn't stop reading them fast enough. I kept missing things, and I'm like, oh wait, I have to go back. Okay, that was really cool. And then I remember I had to get the second book, but money was tight back then, so it was like, I'm not going to buy the second book. And I ended up visiting my aunt, and she had read most of them by then, or the ones that were out anyway, because they weren't all out.
Yeah.
And I actually stole her copy of Chamber of Secrets. I did eventually give it back to her, but it was many years later. And so then that one, of course, I read several times, and then finally was able to track down book 3 and book 4. The fourth book had just come out, because for the longest time that was the only one I had in hardback, because the paperback hadn't come out yet. And since that was the last one, and of course at the end of book 4 is when Voldemort is officially back. Yeah. And what is really about to hit the fan now, if it hasn't already. And I read book 4 over and over again so many times that I broke it. My book 4, my Goblet of Fire, is in 2 halves because the spine broke. It gave up. It was done.
I remember when book 4 came out, I went to the library. And this is when I was just really starting to read them. Book 4 came out, and I went to the library, and they had just got it in. And they're like, well, there's a waiting list. And she's like, but if you can have it read and bring it back in less than a week, I'll let you go ahead and take it. So I took it home, and I started reading, and I took it back to the library the next day. Now, Goblet of Fire is a pretty hefty book.
It's good size.
And I took it back, and I handed it to her, and she was like, did you not read it? I was like, yeah. She was like, how did you read that since you left here? I was like, well, for one, it doesn't take me that long to get home. For two, I sat down and started reading and didn't stop until I finished. She was just like blown away that I had read straight through the entire thing. And I think of all of the Harry Potter books, of all the midnight releases and everything, my favorite was Deathly Hallows.
Yeah, mine was too.
Walmart did a party, and I've mentioned this before, where they gave out the bracelets, and the first so many people got Gryffindor, and then the next so many people got another house, and so on. Granted, I live in a small town, and they barely got out of Gryffindor.
Yeah.
But, they had, like, trivia and stuff, and I remember me and Holly going down there, and I remember standing in line waiting to pay, reading the book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When I got it. It was... And that was one of those that I read through it, I finished it, and I immediately started it again.
I remember sitting there. They had pulled out the books, but they were afraid people were going to get it. They still had the plastic wrap around the palette, and, we're, like, standing there, like, poking at it, like, hurry, let me have it.
I want.
Like, give me. And then they finally, we're, like, grabbing it, we're, like, walking through the store, reading it. We're, like, bumping into people and saying, sorry, move, get out of the way, I'm busy.
Well, see, the funny thing for me with Deathly Hallows is that the midnight release party was actually my husband's and mine's second date. Because we were both really big Harry Potter fans, and so we decided, we would go. We went to Borders. Oh, I miss Borders. But we got there, and we hadn't pre-ordered the book from Borders. I had pre-ordered mine from Amazon, so I knew I wasn't going to get mine until, later in the day, whenever it got there. But I will say, though, when you don't know somebody very well and you're getting to know them, going on a date to a bookstore that also sells like movies and music and that sort of thing is a really good way to get to know people, because you find out we just spent the time, I mean, we kind of watched all of the people in costume and all the little games and stuff, but we spent most of the time like saying, oh, I like this movie, oh, I hate that movie, oh, this and that. It's a good way to get to know people. So it was a really fun date that way, but it was funny because since we didn't pre-order it and they were passing out like probably similar bracelets and that sort of thing, and then anybody who didn't pre-order it and didn't get a bracelet was like the last person in line. So we're like, no. We stayed there and we saw the big pallets come out with all the plastic wrap, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, there it is, and like reaching out to touch it as it goes by. And then everybody did the countdown at midnight. It was like New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And there was like confetti falling down and people cheering and counting down. It was crazy. And the whole time you're sitting there thinking, oh, this is for a book coming out. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, before Harry Potter, did people get that excited about a book release? I don't think so.
No.
I mean, maybe a couple people here and there, but not like this big, humongous waiting till midnight party. That was the thing that was just so cool about that whole series.
Everybody, like, they're already waiting at midnight just to get their hands on the book and be the first ones to have it.
Yeah. And so we stayed for the countdown, and then we immediately left Borders and drove to the Walmart, where there was nobody there. Because Walmart wasn't doing anything. It was Borders and Barnes and Noble and I think another bookstore, one of the independent bookstores, was having a little party, but Walmart wasn't doing anything, and so it was midnight, and they were just putting them out. So my husband, or my date at the time, he grabs his copy and heads to the checkout, and we start reading it in the car as we're driving around. And so we read about 2 or 3 chapters together, and then I went home because it was like 2 o'clock in the morning by this point. I was sleepy. So I went home, and now he started reading his at midnight, and I think he slept at some point and then woke up and started reading it again. My copy didn't arrive until about noon in the mail. I still finished before he did. It took me about 8 hours.
Yeah.
And this was also with the whole time that I was staying with my mom at the time, and she knew that she had dibs on, the next person who got to read it. So I'm sitting in the back room of her house reading, having to listen to, are you done yet? No? Okay. Are you done yet?
Look, when I get done, you will be the first to know, I promise.
And I just remember reading it, and the whole time I was like, oh, okay, that was awesome. Oh my gosh, I love that. Well, oh my gosh, I love that. And then it kept going, and then all of a sudden people started dying, and I'm like, oh God, I'm not going to survive this book.
Yes, that was me. I was like, no, wait, I can't do this. Oh my God, wait. I'm like, Jake, what did you get to this? Because I knew she was ahead of me. So, like, if I read it, I knew she's there. I'm like, oh my God, did you read this part? Did you see this? Why did they do this?
And I just remember walking out of that room, and I didn't say a word. I just held the book out in front of me, and I handed it over to my mom, and she kind of looked up. She's like, so how was it? And I just shook my head and I walked away. I was like, I can't even talk about it yet. It has not fully sunk in. Number one, that it was as good as it was, and then number two, that it was over. And it was sad.
That's what I hate it, because I'm like so excited. We're like, all excited, we finally get this book, and it's like, wait, now my life has no purpose. What do I do
my
now?
life has no meaning.
I have no meaning. There's nothing to look forward to ever again.
Everybody in the whole, well, not just the fandom, but the world. I mean, there's a really diehard Harry Potter fandom. There still is, but there was newspapers and television reporters, everybody covering the midnight release parties. I mean, it was like a worldwide event, which again, it's a book release and it's a worldwide event. How awesome is that? And so you had to be excited, and everybody wanted to know what was going to happen. You wanted to know who survived, and you wanted to know all of the unanswered questions, but at the same time, it's like, you realize that when this comes out, that means that it's all over and we don't get to do this again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like killed all of our topic of conversation. It's like, okay, now when the next Harry Potter book comes out, this is gonna happen. This person's we're gonna find this out. We're
Harry
gonna learn
Potter
this.
crackpot theories.
And like that was our conversation so many days. It was like, well, I think that this is gonna happen, and I think this, and we're predicting like the entire next book, you know. And then we're doing this the whole time with the last like 3 or 4 books we did this. Like, okay, what do you think? This is what I think. You know, and then it's like, what we can't do that anymore. Like, there's no more.
It's like, now what?
There's nothing to predict. There's no more. It's like, this is the end, and
See, this is why you need to read
What
Mortal
happened
Instruments,
now?
because I have Mortal Instruments crackpot
She
theories.
does. And we can hang on to her crackpot theories for that series until, what, 2015?
Yeah.
So we have time.
And I remember posting on, after the Half-Blood Prince came out, I remember posting on the tavern and saying that I thought Harry was going to be the final Horcrux. And I remember Peregrine telling me I was insane. That couldn't happen. I'm like, Harry is going to be the final Horcrux, people. I'm telling you. That's what's going to happen. That's why he can speak Parseltongue. That's why he can see Voldemort's thoughts. He's going to be the final Horcrux. It makes sense. No, you're crazy. You're nuts. That'll never happen. Because then they would have to kill Harry.
So that was me. I was like, no, he's not. Please don't let him, because I'm like, I know he's going to be. He has to be. But I'm like, but then that means they have to kill Harry. I don't want Harry to die. No, he's not. Please don't let him be. It's like, I knew he would be, but I didn't want him to be. You know, it's like, no, I don't want it to end that way.
I also predicted Snape getting the Defense Against the Dark Arts job. And I did that because of the UK cover of Half-Blood Prince. Or no, it was the UK cover. It was when Tim was here. When he came up, or Peregrine from the tavern. He was going to school in New Orleans. And during his spring break, because that was his birthday, and because we had been friends for so long, I bought him a train ticket from New Orleans to Birmingham, and I went and picked him up, and he spent his spring break here. And we got on the internet, and we were looking up the cover of Half-Blood Prince, the UK one. And it was a defense, is it Potions or Defense Against the Dark Arts book? It's Advanced Potions Making, that's what it is. The cover is a photo-like cover of an Advanced Potions Making book. I was like, Snape is going to get the Defense Against the Dark Arts job, and they're going to get another teacher, and Harry's going to get into Advanced Potions.
See, I knew that when he starts trying to pick his job, he has, you know, that they want in the future, and he has to have Advanced Potions. He's like, I'm never going to get it. And I'm like, oh, they're fixing to change that. He's got to get it.
Yeah, because Snape would, his testing levels weren't high enough. Snape wouldn't take him into Advanced Potions.
So we needed to work around that.
Yeah, I'm like, they're going to get another Potions Master that will accept his OWL scores or his Mute scores or whichever one it was.
Yeah, and then he'll finally get his Dark Arts job.
But they're going to make Snape, I said, they're going to make Snape Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. And Tim's like, no, they won't do that unless, you know, because that position is cursed. There will be no more Snape. I'm like, look, I find that I am perfectly okay with that, but...
Well, but that doesn't mean, but it didn't mean that there was going to be no more Snape, because, I mean, you don't die necessarily if you're in that position, but...
For a year.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, really, because, you know, the next year, like, the whole school went dead, you know.
Yeah.
He became the headmaster.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really he wasn't a teacher, but then, you know, not like they were actually teaching anything.
This is true.
See, this is why these books are so great, because you can still talk about stuff, even though they're all been out for how long now?
Oh, yeah, there's...
Forever.
I think a while... Well, when we were talking about our favorite characters, it was on one episode you were talking about, you know, Snape, and I was talking about, you know, I didn't like his motives for what he did, that he did the right thing for the wrong reason, and you can still have these discussions.
Yeah.
Yes. You could have so many discussions about, you know, you could have, like, a 2-hour-long discussion about each character in the series. I mean, still, with knowing everything and knowing exactly how it ended, you could still discuss everything about them as a person.
Yes. Well, you know, Peregrine wrote, and I don't know how long it ended up being. The last time I actually read it, it was several pages, essay about Harry. It was a characterization essay about Harry, and he didn't do this for any reason other than he wanted to.
That's Peregrine.
Yeah.
That's why we love him.
But yeah, I read it. It's been a while. Like I said, I don't remember how long it ended up being, but yeah, it was. I was like, and what else is fun? and Peregrine and I did this. I think it was the fourth movie, actually. I think it was Goblet of Fire. That we got on Skype and both put the movie in and watched it. And he was in Australia and I was here. But we managed to watch the movie together because when he was here, we had watched all of the ones that were out together. So, yeah, I mean, it's still a lot of fun. And him and Marita and I, well, especially Marita and I, have discussed doing that with the rest of the movies. I'm like, it would be fun.
It does sound like fun.
But the weird thing was, his copy of the movie kept getting ahead of mine.
That's
like
weird.
They were playing feeds.
That is weird.
His kept getting ahead. And he would have to pause his and let mine catch up. It was weird. But yeah, that's another. I would say probably Harry Potter and the Belgariad are probably the two series of books that I am the most attached to.
Yeah.
Emotionally.
I can tell.
Yeah. Yes, if you know her.
Well, let's go with some other books that aren't as well known or have as big a fandom attached to it. There's the one that I think I wouldn't necessarily even say that it changed my life necessarily, but it was one of those that kind of made me think, and I always like that. But I'm a sucker for Arthurian legends and stories about Merlin and just the whole, round table and knights and chivalry and all that stuff. I love that.
Yeah.
So for a while I was reading every story, the good and the bad, and trust me, there's a lot of bad.
Yeah.
In that kind of genre. And then I got The Mist of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. Have either of you ever read that one?
I have it, but neither one of us has ever read it. I remember watching the miniseries on TNT.
I bought it and was like, I'm gonna read this, and then I sit there and I looked at it and never did.
Well, I've never actually seen the miniseries. I have heard that it's not too bad. And I say that just because it's an adaptation, and so I'm nervous. But
yeah,
I adore that book. It's, for anybody who doesn't know, it tells the story of King Arthur, but it's from a completely different point of view. Instead, most stories you have Arthur and you have Merlin, and sometimes they throw Lancelot in there or whatever name is given to the Lancelot character. There's several of them. But the thing that was really, really cool with The Mist of Avalon is because it focused on the women. And so instead of talking about Arthur, I mean, they still talked about Arthur, but it was told from his sister Morgan's point of view, or it was told from his mother's point of view, or from Guinevere's point of view. And all of these conflicting factions that were kind of going on, because you had the king and the court and the Christians, and then you had the women from Avalon and the Druids, and just seeing all of these different groups of people, but seeing it primarily from the women's point of view. That was something, Jess, you had said many times that if you find something that you've never seen before, that's something that's new, then you really enjoy it. And this was something that was completely new, because I had never seen these stories focusing on the female aspect of everything. It was always strictly the men and sword fighting, and that's good. I like men and sword fighting, but it was really neat seeing, the women and the druids and that whole aspect of it. Yeah. But it's been a while since I've read that book. I probably need to reread it at some point, but actually I'm trying to make somebody else read it at the time, so I don't actually have it right now. But maybe I can actually kick them enough to make them read it.
Like I'm going to do with Holly and, the house rules. I'm going to beat her with it until she reads the rest of the series.
Well, at least I sent it back to you.
This is true, so I can do that. If you had, I would have just found something else to beat her with.
Okay.
Like, my copies of the other books. But, yeah, I mean, and for me, I guess, I'm trying to think of something else that I can read over and over and over. And I'm coming up short. Well, I mean, the Cassandra Clare books, I mean, I've completely fallen in love with those. And I will probably, when it gets close to August, I'm probably going to reread all of them.
I'm trying to think. I'm like, I know there's some that I've read that I really liked and that I've read, over and over. And I'm like, I cannot think of anything at the moment.
I do really like Terry Brooks' Shannara series. It's not quite to the level of the Belgariad or, the Harry Potter books, but to this day, I cannot reread the first book because, and anybody who has read Sword of Shannara will probably agree with me if they've read Lord of the Rings. It is a blatant ripoff of Lord of the Rings. I mean, it is painful, and I mean this, painfully obvious. And I cannot reread that book now. The last time I tried, I was just like, I can't do this. But his later stuff, after he, develops his own story and starts, creating his own world instead of using something that was already there, become really, really good. And I have read the Voyage of the Gerald Shannara trilogy at least twice that I know of. I haven't read any of them in a long time. But those are really good. Oh, no, it just came to me. I know what else I'm that attached to. Mercedes Lackey.
Yes, you are.
Yes. How did you get that one?
I don't know.
How would you not remember that?
I don't know. I love Mercedes Lackey, her Heralds of Valdemar series. Oh, my Lord. This was one of those that, I found at the library. I was like, okay, I am desperately in need of something new to read. And I went to the library and I found these books. And I'm like, this sounds interesting. I'll read them. It was Arrows of the Queen, Arrows Flight, and Arrows Fall by Mercedes Lackey, which is her original Heralds of Valdemar trilogy. This is the first one she wrote. And I love the character of Talia because it was one of those characters that you just really, 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 really connect with. And the books were so good, and I never looked back, and now I own all of the books in her Heralds of Valdemar series. I have several of her other series. I haven't reread them in a really long time, and I'm due. I need to reread those.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to read those when the Tavern Book Club does Arrows of the Queen.
Yes.
Which one was that?
You bought the Arrows books.
Was it the Arrows
yes.
ones I bought? Okay.
Because I was with you, and I was like, these are the ones you need. This is where you need to start.
Yeah, because we were at McKay, and I was looking at them, and they actually had the entire series. And I'm like, is this the ones I need? And you're like, yes, get those. I'll have them.
See, you need to read those when we do it on the tavern.
Yeah.
But you don't need to do like me and wait until 2 days before we start the discussion. You have that pesky job where you work 12-hour shifts 3 days in a row that gets in the way. So you might want to start a couple of weeks before.
What's good about that job is when I'm not busy at that job, I can spend the entire 12 hours reading.
This is true.
I read an entire book in one shift, and everybody was like, Did you finish? Where was your book? I'm like, it's done. I'm like, what? Because a girl that I work with can, she reads pretty good, and she tried it, and she's like, I had to skip half the book because I wanted to know how it ended, and I'm like, okay. She's like, take it home with you and read it, and I'm like, well, I'll just read it tonight. So I come back to work, I get there, and I start reading the book. And then everybody keeps walking by going, are you still reading that book? Yep. Are you still reading that book? Yep. You can just, every time they walk in there's like a big chunk of the book is read, and they're like, have you really read that much? Yes. Now stop talking to me so I can finish it. And like 10 minutes before time to leave, I finished the book. And they're like, did you give up on the book? I'm like, no, I finished it. How did you do that? I'm like, I read it. When you people would leave me alone. But, I had to stop, like, to go check on patients, and when they were calling out once, so I didn't read for 12 hours straight, but I got through the entire book, and I was like, I am not stopping. Now I have to know the ending, and, like, day shift is coming in. What are you doing? I'm like, shut up. I'm almost done. I barely got done. I'm like, I am not leaving without finishing this book.
I wish you could see the hand motion she's making to go along with the story. She's miming, holding a book, and turning the pages quickly.
I talk with my hands. I can't help it.
It's funny for me because I can see her.
So what you're saying is we need to make this a video podcast from now on?
We probably so definitely. She's just looking over here. It's kind of funny. She's probably going to start hitting me in a minute, but, you know.
Well, just in case anybody was curious, we had mentioned that we were going to be reading Arrows of the Queen for the Tavern Book Club, and we are actually going to start that one on May 15th. So if you start now, you have plenty of time to read it. I probably won't start until, well, close to it, because otherwise I'll forget. I read too much.
I won't either, but I can read those really quickly.
Yeah.
I've read those several times, so they go quickly.
Not like you need to read them. You could probably just recite them to yourself and...
Well, no, I haven't. No, that's the Belgariad. I can sit down and tell you in chronological order exactly what happens from book 1 all the way to the end of the Malorian, because I've read those so much. I'm not quite that bad with Mercedes Lackey, but I did love her. I love her writing, and I love the fact that, you know, something you don't see in a lot of fantasy novels is, you know, homosexual characters and things of that nature. It's not something that crops up a lot in the, you know, in the genre.
Right.
Because it's, you know, a lot of it is set in basically medieval times. And, you know, that was just something that wasn't discussed or heard of in that time period where they're set.
Right.
But Mercedes Lackey, there are quite a few of her characters that are homosexual. And, you know, it's not, she doesn't write them in a way it's important to the story, but it is. I mean, it's not like, oh, look at this, they're gay.
Right.
It's very natural. It's done very well. She's won lots of awards for it.
It's just part of their character. Like, they have, you know, just brown hair, blue eyes, and they're gay.
Yeah, like Vaughn from The Last Herald Maid. I mean, but his story especially talks about him realizing that he's gay and trying to deal with it and come to terms with it, and that's the one she's won so many awards for. Because it's a really, really, really good... That, I don't cry. Anybody that knows me, I can watch a movie, I don't cry. I just don't cry. Those books make me cry. The last one does. It makes me tear up. It's just a very, very good story. And the most recent thing I have read that has gotten me emotionally... that has affected me emotionally and gotten me attached was probably the Ranger's Apprentice books by John Flanagan. That was one of those series that when I read all of the books in the series, when I got to the end, and John Flanagan had started writing a new series that was set in the same universe, but it was different characters, and a different part of that universe, different part of the world. I checked them out of the library, but I could not make myself read them because I felt like I would be betraying Will and Halt. I'm like, I can't, because I might love these characters like I do Will and Halt, and I can't do that to them. I'm not emotionally ready for that yet. Because those books were so good. I mean, the first one's kind of slow, but after you get through the first one, they get really, really, really good. And Halt is one of those characters, kind of like Belgariad, that you can't help but love him, even though he's a curmudgeon.
Even curmudgeons need love.
Yeah, and Will is a lot like Arian. I mean, he's the young protege, you know, and, you know, they're rangers. They shoot bows and arrows. We all know I have a thing for archery.
Yes.
So, I mean, they're really good. I finally got around to reading the Brother Band Chronicles, which was his other series, and they were good too, but they're not the Ranger's Apprentice. They're not Will and Halt. Mm-hmm. But I loved them so much. They were so good. And I think Rebecca read those too, or Marita. I'm used to talking to her in private messages, and I'm used to thinking of her as Rebecca now. I think she read those too.
Yeah, I think she did. I've read the first one I might have read the second one, but I don't think I ever got past that just because it didn't draw me in as much, but I probably also saw something else shiny and got distracted.
Yeah, I have that problem. Oh, look, shiny.
Yeah.
I have ADOS, attention deficit, shiny. Something shiny floats by and it distracts me. I can't help it.
Yes. I have the same problem.
But there's so many books out there that I love. Oh, and then, see, I keep thinking of more that I really, really like. Rachel Vincent's Soul Screamer series, really, really good. Love those. They're about a girl who is a banshee. She doesn't know she's a banshee. She just knows that she screams her head off and somebody dies.
Well, that's different.
Yeah. She finds out that she's a banshee.
Hey, let's try that. I'm going to scream really loud until somebody dies.
No.
Wait till we get off the podcast before you do that.
Pretty much. Well, it would either be me or Denise, and I would like to keep both of us alive.
Yeah. We need each other. We need each other for Lord of the Rings Online, if nothing else.
When we walk to the end of my driveway, there's enough people in earshot that we won't miss.
This is true. But she doesn't realize that she's a banshee. And here's the twist. Banshees, you think, are always female. That's kind of how the legend goes. But not so much. They're actually male banshees. And the reason now. The reason she finds out that she's a banshee is because the popular hot guy at school that everybody wants is the male banshee, and he realizes what she is, and he decides, that he wants her to be his girlfriend, and yada yada yada, and so on and so forth. I think I mentioned Nash when we did our, the characters we've just fallen in love with.
I think so.
I should have been for that conversation.
Yeah, you had to work. You were going to do it with us.
Yeah, I was supposed to do that when you did it without me.
Well, you could have called in and done a podcast instead of going to work.
You're going to pay me for the podcast?
No, I don't even get paid for the podcast.
No, none of us do.
I need to work because I have bills.
But that one was also really good, and I don't have the newest ones, but I have most of those. But I would have to say my biggest ones that I'm emotionally invested in would be definitely, the Belgariad and the Malorian, the Harry Potter books, and the Mercedes Lackey books.
Well,
because
yeah, there's a couple others that I'm really, like you said, emotionally invested in, and I'm going to it's just going to be very simple. It's anything that John Green writes. Because, now, warning to anybody who picks up one of his books, there's a good chance that you will cry, but you get drawn in to these stories, and if something happens to these characters, you feel it. The very first one of his books I read it's called Paper Towns, and it's about this group of high school seniors. And it's not fantasy or anything like that. It's strictly young adult. Yeah, he doesn't write fantasy. But he tells the story of these, like I said, there's high school seniors, and this one in particular named Quentin. And his next door neighbor is a girl named Marga. And they were friends when they were little, but then they grew apart. And he has a major crush on her and always has, but she's, one of the popular hot girls at school, so she doesn't really have much use for him right now. Except then she recruits him for this late night sort of adventure. And it involves getting revenge on her boyfriend, who she finds out is cheating on her, and getting revenge on the friend who supposedly knew this and didn't tell her, and then breaking into SeaWorld because they live in Orlando. And SeaWorld is the only the only theme park she hadn't broken into in the middle of the night, which I also found really amusing. But then Margot disappears. She runs away from home, and Quentin comes to find out that she has left behind some clues. And he goes about trying to solve these clues to figure out where she's gone, and spends a good part of his senior year trying to find her. And it was really sweet, and by the end of it was also, I have a soft spot for books that are about kind of the end of childhood, and that turning point where all of a sudden, responsibility comes into your life, and losing some of that carefree innocence. And that's one thing that John Green does very well. He captures that feeling. Mm-hmm. And so Paper Towns is one of those books that you say, oh, I'll just read one more chapter and then I'll go to bed. And then you finish the book, you look at the clock, and it's 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. I was a mess the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So then I had to go to actually the first book that he wrote, which is Looking for Alaska. That one does the same thing, and I cried like a baby. Oh my gosh, that book. It's a wonderful book. And Alaska is a person. It's not like the state, because if you were looking for that, it's pretty obvious it's big state. But no, Alaska is a person. It's a girl.
Ah.
And a very quirky, fun, but troubled girl. And again, it was just one of those that I could not stop reading. And then by the end of it, it was just almost like a feeling of what I just need to sit and process this by myself in a corner for a while, because it's that emotionally you feel that emotionally connected with these people.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm not even going to get into his most recent book, which is called The Fault in Our Stars, because I still haven't recovered, and it's been months. I mean, he's won all kinds of awards for that book. It was like the Time Magazine Book of the Year, on the New York Times bestseller list for, it may still be there, I don't know. But it's also really, really, really good. But like I said, I am still processing that one. It was that good. So yeah, anything he writes, I will sit in line and wait for it, because his books are awesome.
Yeah. I love books like that leave you affected.
Yeah.
That change your worldview or make you think differently or change your life or, something along those lines.
Mhm.
Those are the good ones.
Well, see, for me, that's part of why I read. I mean, a
Yes.
lot of it is kind of escapism, because let's face it, when you in the real world is boring sometimes, most of the time. And you want to read something that will remove you from that and let you live in somebody else's world for a little while and experience adventures or experience fun or sometimes experience sadness, and learn to appreciate something in your own life. And that sounds corny, but that happens with me all the time with books. But things like that is why I read so much.
Yeah.
It's to have those experiences and to get to know these characters that I almost feel like they're real people, because they feel like real people. And when something happens to them, I feel sad for them or happy for them. And again, I know this sounds silly, but I know you guys understand.
Yeah, I do, definitely. I mean, well, that's how I feel about when I read the Belgariad and Malorian. It's like, even though I've read them so many times and I know what happens, it's like they still affect me that way. When Garion gets his little hissy fit because he finds out he's supposed to marry Sinedra, and her hissy fit when she finds out she has to marry Garion, and it's like, but you want each other, and I'm happy for you because I know you really do, but at the same time, I can kind of see, I can kind of sympathize with the whole nobody told me this,
Right.
you know. And when good things happen, I'm happy, and when bad things happen, and when funny things happen, they make me laugh.
Yeah.
I mean, and then and it's not just the Bulgariad, it's any of Edding's books. They're old friends. It's like putting on that pair of jeans that you've had forever that there's no way they would ever fit anyone but you.
Right.
They're comfortable. They fit. And that's how I feel about the David Eddings books. And I mean, I'll even love the Elenium and the Tamuli to a lesser degree. But the Bulgariad is the one that I read first, so I guess it will always mean more to me. But it's definitely escape. To me, Cherik and Algaria and Drasnia and the Vale of Alder, they're all real places in my head.
Well, yeah,
I
I
love
do the same thing. I know it's not a real place, but Hogwarts feels like a real place. I know it's
Yes.
not a real place, but Middle Earth feels like a real place.
Hey,
And
Middle Earth is real. It's New Zealand and all that stuff out there actually, exists. And I want to go see it and play in a hobbit hole.
I do too.
I love reading a book when you can actually feel like you're going to that place. Like it feels like something real to you.
Yeah.
You get that connection to it. It's like I want to be there. I want to find this place and go and.
I want to live in the Vale of Alder.
I want to climb the big tree. You think they'd let me?
Well, everybody else has. Sinedra ran around it like a squirrel.
That's true.
I want to see the rock Garion tried to throw across the veil
Yeah.
and ended up buried up to his armpits in the dirt. That scene makes me laugh every time.
Yeah.
When he's trying to tell Horse to go find Heather and bring help to get him out.
And when Heather and Silk show up and they're like, "Do you think he meant to do it?" Well,
it's probably some important sorcerer type things.
yeah, and we wouldn't understand since we're just common people.
Yeah. And Garion's like, "Would you just get me out of here?"
Are you sure? Are you really done with whatever it is you're doing? Yeah.
Yeah.
They're old friends, and we just love to go back and visit them, just like we would, like, real friends.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of the stuff in the Belgariad, it reminds me of, real conversations I have. Like when I posted one of the photos on Facebook. Which one was it that I tagged you in?
I don't remember.
I forget what the conversation was. Which one it was. It was.
I can tell you in just a second, though.
Well, yes, we have computers and they're handy.
We have
Apparently
photos
not.
of me. Apparently you didn't tag me in it.
No, I just tagged you in the caption. The one where Garion looks at his grandfather and he's like, "Well," and Belgarad's like, "I didn't say anything," and Garion's like, "You didn't have to. I could hear you thinking all the way over here." Holly and I have that conversation a lot.
I didn't say anything. I could hear you think it, but it doesn't count. I didn't actually say it.
And then there's the one of my favorites is Belgarath and Belden. I hate you. No, you don't. You're just saying that to make me feel better. They have that one a few times. I mean, it's just, there's so many things that they say that I'm like, I say that, and at this point, because it's been so long, I don't know if I say it because I read it in the books, or
Probably.
if I, I don't know if it came from the books or if I, it probably did. I mean, that's probably where I got this stuff. I know that's where I got, don't you know if you talk about bad stuff, it makes it happen?
Right.
Because Silk tells Dernick that when Dernick says it's going to snow.
Right.
Don't you know? If you talk about bad things, it makes them happen.
I've always said that, and I never read those books, so that's not where I got it from.
That's where I got it. But yeah, those books, they're like friends. I mean, you will have to pry my books out of my cold dead hands. Bury me with my copies of the Belgariad and the Malorian, because I'm going to need something to do in the afterlife.
Well, unless there's any other books we want to talk about, we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah, because we've been yammering for an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we could yammer on and on and on, obviously. But, yeah, as you can tell, there are so many books that we just absolutely love. And we want to hear what books you absolutely love. So we would love to hear, just to get some ideas of what kind of things our listeners are reading and what kind of things that they absolutely adore. So there's lots of ways you can contact us. Our email is bibliophiles.podcast@gmail.com, and we'd love to read some on the next show. So if you want to email us and just let us know what your favorite books are, and we can see, what everybody else loves. And so you can email us, you can follow us on Twitter. We are at BibAnonPodcast. And you can also leave comments at our official page, and that is www.bibliophiles-anonymous.com. And as always, you can find us over at the Malorian Tavern, and that website is www.maltavern.com.
Yep.
Now, here's a good question. Do we know what we're talking about next week?
No.
No. Okay, there's a reason why we don't know, and that's because we are still looking for some topic suggestions. So please send us some topic suggestions to any of those contact areas. Twitter, email, whichever one is easiest.
There's always Beautiful Creatures if you want to track it down. Maybe that'll motivate me to actually finish it.
Oh, I'll have to see if I can find it. And if I finish Lyriel by then. Because I need to finish it. I'm not that far away from doing it, but I need to. But yes, yeah. Topic suggestions. Anything that you want to hear us babble on about for 45 minutes to an hour, we would love to oblige.
Yes. anything book related or book suggestions.
Yes.
If you want us to read something and tell you what we think about it, we'll be more than glad to.
Sure. We may tell you about it whether you want us to or not.
Yeah, you may not agree with our opinion, but we'll tell you what we think.
Oh, absolutely. So, anyway, I think that's going to do it for us this week.
Yep, I think that'll do it.
All right, so we will see you next week then.
Yep.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Bye.